Hello and welcome back to another episode of Unscripted with myself, Katy Davies, and the lovely Sarah Atkins. So today I have something to bring to Sarah, all about the magic of her line three. So I have very little line three energy in my chart. I have a lot of line three people in my world, and I literally was just talking to someone who said, "Oh my goodness." It just seems like my life has so much drama in it and yours doesn't. And my brain went, that's line three. And I, as a human design reader, I have always struggled with how to explain line three and talk about line three because the original language is a little bit harsh. Sarah and I were just double checking it and looking it up. And so I thought, well, Sarah is a line three. Let's have a chat and see
Yeah.
how to unpack this line three energy. How can it show up? What does it really mean?
I mean, I know what you mean. So my kind of first introduction to human design was through the original language,
Oh, okay.
which is harsh, right?
Yeah.
If anybody's read the original book by Ratu the line three, even just in its profile name, is called the martyr. So I was a bit like when I read that, I was like, oh,
It's
that's
not.
a bit shit, isn't it?
You're the martyr. Yeah.
Yeah, no one wants to be described as a martyr. And that being said, though, I don't think the martyr is, I can kind of see where the martyr description comes from. I don't really identify with being a martyr permanently. But I do actually, when I read the description, I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of have been a bit guilty of like that internal narrative where I go, oh my God, why does this always happen to me? Or like, why can't things just go smoothly? Why, just for once, why can't I just like have a smooth journey? Because I mean, all right, life just isn't straightforward in the first place, but I probably have had more than my fair share of bumps in the road and falls and, things like that. And that's actually the description in the original language is that the purpose that the purpose of the line three, if you have a line three in your profile, is that we are life's explorers, right? We are here um, to discover what doesn't work.
See, when you just read that out, we were just checking it before we came on, and you actually read out the person likes to discover what doesn't work. That is going to come with its challenges.
Yeah,
Like,
right. But it means, I mean, that indicates that you're going to have more failures than successes, just in the very nature of the way we do things. Because we're constantly challenging and testing and pushing and I mean, is it James Dyson who very famously created over 200 prototypes before he got to the Dyson Hoover? Now everybody else sees like, oh my God, he's this amazing inventor, but they don't see all of the trial and error that he went through in order to get to that final thing that he's now really well known for.
mm,
And I actually don't know what his profile number is. I should probably have a look, but
yes.
that would be really interesting, wouldn't it? But that's that metaphor is basically how line threes go through life. I think the original description says something about we quite often discover things by accident because life or solutions bump into us. So sometimes a solution presents itself and you don't actually you're not really looking for it. It's you're looking for something else. Something that I am aware of because I used to think that I was quite flaky. Um, I get bored very quickly, and even like through my career, it's like, oh, if you look at my employment history when I was much younger, I'd be working somewhere for like 18 months to 3 years, somewhere in between that thing. It's like I've mastered that. I need something different because I get bored. And I used to think it was a boredom thing, but actually now what I recognize is like, oh, that's not working for me anymore. I need to move on to the next thing.
Mm.
It's not a boredom thing. The line three catapults you because it's all about experience and gaining experience. in whatever that might be. It might be relationships, it might be career, it might be, I don't know, if you're creative. Like, I mean, I've got a creative background. One of my favorite years, and this is funny because obviously it's only in retrospect, but one of my favorite years of studying was when I did my foundation year at art college. And it's because I didn't have to stick to any one discipline.
Okay.
It was fully experimental. So I did like a project in sculpture, I did a project in fine art, I did a project in textiles, I did a project in graphic design. Like, it was really like, oh, I can test this and explore this. I've got a room upstairs full of art supplies. Just something new comes out, I'm like, oh, I want to try that, I want to see how that works. It's like everything is just an experiment.
Yeah,
I
see,
don't know.
that's the new language, isn't it? So that's kind of the language I use when I first introduced someone to you. It's like, instead of saying line three, the martyr, life's gonna bump into you, you're gonna bump into life, you're gonna fail at most stuff you do. To learn and get the experience of it and help others, I say you're the experimenter because
Yeah,
it's just so much more positive and uplifting and kind of through that experimentation. Obviously, then if you look at it as a scientific lens, there will be a element of fail. I will say, like mindset, there is no such thing as fail.
yeah,
So it does sound a lot warmer and fluffier and easier to like take on in a positive way. But then in the reality is I do still find all the conversations I have with the line threes is why does this keep happening to me? Why, like you said, all that like why do I have all this stuff happen all the time? And so I think sometimes then later on, going back to that original language can sometimes maybe then help at a later date. Maybe. Do you think?
it can do, because I think one of the biggest shifts, even though I'm aware that I guess life bumps into me and all the rest of it, and you can get into that victim mindset, I suppose, like, oh my God, this always happens to me. Like, um why can't things go smoothly for a while? One of the things that really helped me with this was actually, okay, reading about the fact that you're a catalyst. So line threes are meant to figure out what works, because what we do is we then share our insights and our experiences so that other people don't have to make the same mistakes, right?
Yes.
So it's an evolution. And what, rather than kind of randomly bumping into things and not really learning anything, or not actually integrating the learnings or reflecting on the learnings, things are just going to keep going wrong and keep happening, right? The key thing is, in when you're experimenting and being a scientist, is that you reflect on the results.
Yes.
What did work? What didn't work? Okay, what's the learning? What can I do differently next time? So I've learned to be much more reflective, rather than thinking, oh, fucking hell, that failed, or that didn't work, or, it failed again. Is that actually, it wasn't a complete failure, because what did I learn?
Yes. Yeah. And that's how evolution happens, isn't it? And
Yeah.
that's how all this stuff happens. We
Yeah.
we learn and and so whenever I am kind of introducing or working with, if I have a client who's a line three and we're actually talking, talking about business and stuff, for me it's like it's a learning mindset.
Yeah.
That's the biggest piece because everything is just like you say, it's all to do with experience. And you
Mm-hmm.
can't get experience or have experience unless there's something to experience.
Yeah.
Like you can't develop that wisdom and
No.
that knowledge and all of that amazing stuff if nothing ever happens.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, because if you look at psychological research in terms of like personality traits, I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Carol Dweck, who's the growth mindset lady. Okay, so she did some really pioneering research around 2010, 2011 around mindset. And when I was training as a teacher, it started being brought into secondary schools, growth mindset, right? And it was, I guess, if we look at this again retrospectively now, this is looking at how conditioning can impact us. So her approach was like, from a growth mindset perspective, we either have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, right?
Yeah.
And it's this idea that people are born with talents. We have gifts. Like some people are just really good at maths, some people are really good at music, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And a fixed mindset is where, I don't know, maybe you're a kid. I remember developing this thought or belief that I'm rubbish at maths,
Okay.
right? It's not actually true.
Mm.
But a fixed mindset is believing that I'm always rubbish at maths and I can never get better at it, right? A growth mindset is where we understand that if we practice at something, we can get better. So
Yes.
changing the language is like, oh God, I'm no good at maths yet.
Yeah, that
Just
yet word.
opens up so much possibility, right? Now, if you think about when we were at school and it was very chalk and talk, and if you can't do it, you're branded as thick, and you go into the set, and that's not very growth mindset, right? That's categorizing you into a certain, like, oh, you're not so good at maths, we're going to put you down here.
Mm.
And the language has changed a lot in schools because of all this research that's been done. And one of the things that came out of Carol Dweck's research was schools were praising the outcome,
Right. Yeah.
grades, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're an A. Oh, I'm an A. Okay. What that does, though, is psychologically, that can create a fixed mindset because what happens is people or kids or all of us, we all do it. We start then worrying, like, what if I can't do better? What if I can't replicate that?
Mm-hmm.
What if that was a fluke? So we then start closing ourselves down in terms of our mindset. Now, this can all happen with a conditioning, right? The what she discovered is if you start praising the effort rather than the outcome, kids are more willing to try
Mm-hmm.
and explore and experiment. So possibility opens up again. There's a really interesting video where she showed, I'm sure it must still be on YouTube, where they took two groups of children and they got them to draw the teacher, they got them to draw the butterfly, and they got them to give feedback in different ways. So one of them was like, oh, I really love your picture. What is it, kind of thing? Or it was very kind of closed in the feedback. Whereas the growth mindset group were like, oh, I really love how you did this. You've made a really lovely shape. It might not look like a butterfly, right?
Mm.
Because the butterfly is the outcome. What they did was they picked up on other elements that they really liked, and the general well-being and positivity was much higher, which meant the children were more willing to have a go at doing it themselves
Mm.
rather than judging the outcome.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we all respond to different things in different ways.
Yeah,
Um, and I know like I don't have a lot of line three in my chart at all, and I worry. I almost wish like there was a bit more line three in my chart to encourage me to do a bit of experimentation and trying and playing. I mean, I do, but I am a bit more fixed on, the outcome. There's a lot of line one energy in my chart, so I'm more investigative than
yeah.
experience. Um,
Well, you feel more confident when you've got the tangible facts and the foundations of research, right? I was
yeah,
talking about this with my client. So she's got the client I spoke with yesterday is a 1-3,
yes.
which is a challenging combination, right?
Yes. Yeah, because the ones like, okay, let's do all the research, let's get all our foundations on track, and the three's like, can we just get going? Can we
Yeah,
just try
that's
it,
it. We don't need
please?
that. Let's get through it. That's
Let's
all we
get through.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a Facebook group and someone was commenting about that and they said, oh, that makes sense because sometimes I feel like I'm halfway through my research and I just go, oh. I just started it anyway. And I said, yeah, that's correct for you. And I think I actually said something like, if that happens, what it's telling you is what you will have learned from that experience, whether it succeeds or not, is far more valuable than anything you would have learned as the line one carrying on
Yeah.
with the piece. And like you said, the whole line three thing is around bringing that out into the world. And I wonder how many line threes do share, or if they're worried about the almost like the chaosness of it, and it is wisdom that is meant to be shared with everybody else. And I wonder how many line threes actually step into that kind of piece.
Yeah, it is. It's funny, isn't it? Because I've got the line three in the first part of my profile. The other half of my profile is a five,
That's
which
definitely the sharing piece.
is definitely the sharing, but also worries ever so slightly about how it's being presented and what people are thinking, like what people are taking from it. So whilst I am totally meant to share, I can actually not share because I worry about the projection that people are going to take of what I'm projecting out. Like I project this idea that I'm the all-seeing, all-dancing expert, and it's like I really don't feel like I am because I still feel like I know I'm still playing with it and exploring and experimenting. Um, so I think people can place what I worry about, and this is where I get in my own head, classic generator. Um, I worry that people put me much higher up in their expectations than I have of myself.
Right. Yeah. So that's a classic 3-5. Um, I was going to say limitation, but it's a limitation that you're potentially putting on
You put
yourself.
on yourself,
It's
yeah,
not a limitation of the profile. It's an expression. So I've started, I can't remember if I've mentioned this on here or where, but I'm just going to repeat it, is I've started talking about human design as a set of potentials.
yeah.
And the potential, there's various potentials, and it's not until we come along and collapse it that we make it a reality. And so the potential for the 3-5, that is one of the potential outcomes.
Mm.
That belief kind of forms it, but the other is no, actually, like just
Own it.
come out there because I think for me, which I find interesting, is although I've mentioned several times, I don't have a lot of line three energy in my chart. I did a physics degree. So I spent 4 years being taught to like experiment,
Yeah.
but in a very scientific line one E kind, even though I'm a 2-4. So I'm a 2-4, but all the other planets are ones and fives pretty much. Um, so I resonate with that a lot. I've got a lot of the logic circuitry.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of other places in my chart that kind of lean into that side, even though I'm a 2-4. Um, and so when I was at uni, obviously we did a lot of experimentation and I wrote loads of scientific reports and all that kind of thing. But I think something again that if we do start using the analogy from the science world, from the scientific world, is part of the reason why the scientists report their findings is because, as you mentioned the word earlier, the catalyst or the catalyst, a scientist who is stuck on their project or a scientist who is also doing research in the same subject will read everybody else's findings, will read all those reports of those scientific experiments because even if it failed, they read something that then is the catalyst for them to go, oh my gosh, that's like, if I then do this and put this with this, or that didn't work for them, okay, so I'm not going to bother trying that in my experiment. I'm going to do this and I'm going to learn from their experiment because what have they already, and then that's how in the scientific world, the progress actually populates. And so if we then translate that into the real world,
Yeah.
that's what's meant to happen. But I think actually using that analogy of the scientific world can help to think, oh, right, okay, yeah, I will, maybe I will start sharing my failures because that's what saves other people, like you say, doing the same things and gives them their catalyst and their kickoff point for their journey.
Yeah, and you're right. And what this can happen quite frequently as well. So the story that you just shared about the research and um, reading things, that quite often happens to me in life. Not that I'm reading other people's research, but I observe, I watch, and I take things in, and I read and I listen, and quite often, and this does happen a lot, somebody will say something or come to me with a challenge or a problem. I'm like, well, it's fairly obvious, isn't it? You just do that instead. And what seems obvious to me, because I've taken in everything, I massively underestimate how it is not obvious to everybody else.
Yeah,
They don't have the breadth of experience that I do,
yeah,
just
yeah.
by the very nature of it. Um,
Mm.
and it's just funny, because I can track this back again. Like, looking, hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? But you, once you kind of understand a little bit more about how you work, and then you look back at past experiences, and you're like, oh, I was always doing that. So in my previous life, I was a garment technologist and I used to travel to factories. I was a very general technologist, so I had I didn't have like a specialist area. I worked in different areas. So I've worked in knitwear and jersey wear, I've worked in lingerie, swimwear, beachwear, I've worked in I didn't do product, but I did women's wovens, like so smart casual, like denim, things like that. So I worked lost a lot of different product areas for long periods of time. So I became a bit of an expert, I suppose, in each one as I worked with them. And I used to go to factories, and there was part of me, line five, that is going, I'm trying to tell this factory owner who's been in the industry for like 30 years, and I'm like 20, 30 something. Like, he must think, who the hell is she? And I actually mentioned this to one of my factory managers once. And he said, no way, Sarah. He said, what you underestimate, he said, I've got 30 years experience in this factory, in this sector.
Yeah,
Your experience spans lots of different product areas, different factories across different countries. You bring breadth and ideas and innovation. That's what you bring. That's why we respect you. And I was like, and when you think about that, you're like, oh, I do that in life. That's exactly what I do in life.
yeah, yeah. Because, and what I love is, when you first start learning about human design as a system, is that part of I don't think I've read this description very often, so I don't know where, I'm hoping I haven't made this up and you're going to confirm that I'm saying something that's actually true. But I'm sure I read somewhere that, again, I have to be careful with my language, I'm summarizing a bit here, but part of the problem with the world is we're not living our own design. And if everyone lived their own design and slotted in, that's how the world would work perfectly. And so we would all actually have this harmonious, you doing your role, which is needed as, the overseer and all these things. And by the way, I love that. I mean, a garment technician, I was like, what even is that? But that was just like amazing. Um, but for the world to be harmonious, if we're all actually acknowledging, okay, this is my genius. My genius is the experimentation, the experience, the stuff. And then you do have the bookworm over here, who is the line one, maybe a 5-1 or a 1-3. And there's just a slightly different nuance to it. And nothing is wrong with any of the individual experiences. And actually, if we all followed our own path, how they all come together is how it's meant to be.
Exactly. So I've heard various different um, descriptions of the different lines, and I'll get the description here from the original description. He describes it like a house, right? The hexagram, you've got the 6 lines, and think of it like the structure of the house. Okay. So the first line is the foundations, which is on what the house is built, right? The second line is your living space with the curtains wide open so that other people can look in from the street. The third line is that transitional space or the spiral staircase moving from the first to the second floor. Okay. So you've got your foundations, you've got your living space, which is your line two, where everybody's watching what they're doing. And then you've got the line three, which transitions from downstairs, lower trigram, to upstairs, which is the upper trigram. You've then got the fourth line, which is the second floor foundation of the house. Okay. The fifth line is the mysterious second story window with the curtains drawn when nobody can see in. And the expectant speculators standing outside, wondering what's going on. And then you've got the sixth line is the roof of the house with the bird's eye view, who can see into the next house, the house beyond, the neighborhood. They can see what's around them.
Yeah, it's like we're all there's all a different part to play and a piece that is needed.
Yeah.
And I read the same in I read this book before I even found human design. It was called Surrounded by Idiots.
Oh, yes. I've heard of that, but I've not actually read
You've
it.
not read it? Oh my God,
It's like the different profiles, isn't it? The red,
so
blue, green.
at the time, I literally made everybody I knew read it. I made my clients read it. So yeah, it's the disc profiling. It's the red, yellow, green, blue thing. And I found it fascinating. And as I was reading the book, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is why like I clash with certain people. This is blah blah blah, this person. And as you're reading it, it's a bit like once you know human design, once you know human design, like I reckon they're a manifesting generator. I reckon they're like I was doing I was like, I bet they're a yellow. I bet they're this, that, and the other. But towards the end of the book, they do all these different experiments. And one of them is they put a team of red people together, a team of blue people together, a team of green people together, and a team of yellow people together. And basically, none of them
Oh,
succeeded in the
no.
task. They
I think,
couldn't do it. And
yeah,
then when they had a team that was made up of everybody, they did the task. And
yeah,
it's like something that simple is like we are all here to bring our role,
yeah.
and how they combine is how it's meant to be. So no
Exactly,
one.
but that's where we need to raise our own self-awareness. Like purely our role in this life is to understand ourselves, right? If we can understand what we bring to the world and understand how we operate personally, then we can make sure that we're in the right spaces with the right people doing the right things. And if everybody's doing that, like you said, perfect world, really.
Perfect world. So again, I think I don't think I've got it here. The latest book that we haven't ventured into yet, the Karen Curry Parker book about the 2027
Yeah,
thing. There's a whole line in there where she actually sort of says, you might be sitting there thinking, what is going on in the world?
yeah,
I don't know how I can help. I can't make a difference. And I can't remember the wording, but she writes a little paragraph in there saying literally the most important thing you can do for the world right now is to literally what you just said, have self-awareness, understand yourself and understand your role. And if every single person did that and collapsed the potentials, in the highest expression instead of the lowest, we'd be good.
yeah,
We'd be golden. Um, and so it's like, oh, right, okay. Because again, I think this is a little bit, I'm not sure if this analogy is quite right, but it's popped into my mind. I remember thinking years ago, with climate change and, all these different things, like what difference is it going to make? Because I started using bags for life
yeah,
before the supermarkets actually made us.
yeah,
And they took away our carrier bags. Because to me, it just made sense. Like, I know I'm going shopping. I can take a bag with me.
yeah,
And I remember thinking kind of a lot of like, climate change and what can I do and what is the point? And but I was like, and I remember thinking back then, but if everybody thought that, then of course nothing's going to change. But so I started buying glass jars of honey instead of plastic squeezy bottles and just like little things. I was like, is it making a big difference? Well, just me doing it? No, but if everybody did it, it would. And
Yeah,
it's the same kind of thing. And it's, I know I've talked about this on the other episodes. The most important thing is what you said, is the self-awareness and actually then honoring it and not doubting ourselves and self-trust and going on our own path. And how you get to that is not the important piece. For you and me, we're using human design as a tool to get to that place.
mhm,
But if you can do it a different way without the human design, great. But for me, the human design is a great start of bringing in that awareness. But however you do it, it's honoring our own truth and playing our part and not denying it. And if you are a line three and you're not, it's presumably a lot harder when you resist it, right?
yeah, yeah. Because I I always say that I'm a recovering perfectionist, right? I have perfectionist tendencies. I'm a Libra Sun Aquarius rising, but I was born right on the cusp of Virgo and Libra. So it's only, it depends what you read. Some years I might come under a Virgo, some years I might come under a Libra. But when you actually do my birth chart, I was born under a Libra Sun. I am aware that I can be overly harsh on myself and I want to do things well. And I got brought up with this mindset, fixed mindset to a certain extent, that if something's worth doing, it's worth doing well,
Right.
right? Which is perfectly reasonable. And that was kind of drilled into me, like to be your best, like to do your very best, except, which is fine with that intention. But I interpreted it as that, well, if I'm not perfect, then it's not good enough.
Right.
But that's my interpretation. That's my internal interpretation. That wasn't the intention that it was given to me with. So that this is where conditioning can kind of send us off track a bit. Like I almost conditioned myself that failing was bad. Failing is not good, and I can internalize that. What I've had to learn in that deconditioning process over the last whatever 5 6 years is that my failures and my experiments and my explorations are what I am here to do. That's okay. And
Yeah.
having more compassion for myself.
Yeah.
That's a really big piece that I've had to work on.
So as we wrap up, what advice would you give to a line three or anyone who maybe has, we've talked before about parenting and maybe you have a line three in your world, maybe you have, yeah, a child who is a line three in your world. What advice, as we wrap up, just to close this lovely conversation, what advice would you give around that
The acronym that I use all the time is that there is no fail, it's a first attempt in learning.
first attempt at learning? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so knowing that for yourself and
Yeah.
encouraging anyone else in your world who you can, maybe you have a client, maybe it's a partner, a friend. If you happen to know their human design and you happen to know that they're a line three, it's helping them to move into that space and collapse that potential up
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed this. All the details, if you want to know more about how to get in touch, are below. And we will be back soon for another episode.